Welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real, as in real estate. The only show that looks at the real issues affecting residential real estate right here in our own county and across the country with our real expert, the real deal, Roseanne Nitty from Keller Williams Realty. Hey, Roseanne, how are you?
Hi, Paul. I'm good. How are you?
All right. You really going to give us some good stuff today? You brought somebody very real with you. I can see that. You got a real person.
I brought a real person today.
Okay.
I brought Kim Ornellas from Pointe Settlement Services. It really is a mouthful to say, but
well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, Kim works with me out of my office in Newport Beach, out of the Keller Williams office. And I'm grateful that she's here today. So we're going to talk about escrow and what escrow does and stuff like that. First, though, Kim, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm a native of Orange County, and I've been, in the escrow industry for about 35 years. My dad was a broker.
Wow.
So he's been since passed away for quite a while now, but that's how I got into it. And I just started as a receptionist and went to an assistant, computer operator, second assistant.
We've seen it from the ground up.
Right.
Yeah.
And I worked my way up and then became an escrow officer and then became an escrow manager. So now I actually manage the escrow department where I'm at. And I was involved quite heavily in the escrow association and did all the seminars and conferences and things like that.
So I think a lot of people don't really know what escrow is. I know now, for me, I have my license in Florida, Virginia, California, and Hawaii. And in Virginia and Florida, we use attorneys. We don't use escrow.
Correct.
And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show today is we could talk about what is escrow, what does escrow do, what they don't do. And in both of our experiences out of our office with some of the new agents, they don't really know what escrow does, and you know, it's interesting when I'm explaining to them, wait a minute, that's your job, not escrow's job. So tell us today, what is escrow and what does escrow do?
Escrow basically is a neutral third party, and we facilitate all of the paperwork, all of the funds, and we make sure that we meet all of the conditions per the real estate contract prior to closing the escrow. So that's why they call us a neutral third party.
And you do what we tell you to do. So if I'm a broker or an agent or whoever I am, and if I'm the listing agent or the selling agent, you prepare the escrow instructions as per the contract.
Correct.
As well as if there's a change to the contract. And you don't really make any assumptions. It's all what the contract says or what the agents or all the parties agree to, correct?
That is correct. Everything is written. Everything is a written instruction. The escrow instructions don't mirror the purchase contract. Certain things are put in there, but that's where we get the basis of drawing our instructions according to that purchase contract. And then we follow it accordingly all the way until the escrow closes, and we're ready to close as long as all those conditions are met.
And what don't you do? I know, for instance, we did a deal just recently where it was another agent that I was coaching, and you don't keep track of when the contingencies are supposed to be removed or when the home inspection is supposed to be done. That's not your job,
Correct.
Although sometimes people expect you to know that. And what doesn't escrow do? Because I know you do a lot of things that you shouldn't be doing, or
Sure.
You're very
and that's
helpful.
a great question.
You're very helpful.
Great question. First, we don't give legal advice, and I will tell you that we get asked that on a daily basis, probably since I first started in escrow up until just today, all the time. So we refer anything like that over to a legal counsel or refer them to legal counsel. Tax consequences, CPA.
Right.
We don't do
Right.
anything to do with that because in taking title it can have tax consequences.
Absolutely.
FRIPTA, withholding foreign sellers,
Right.
rental properties, things like that. So no legal advice, no CPA
And we would hope
advice.
the agent knows a little bit about where to direct their clients, especially with rental properties. And they're taking off the top, not meaning to interrupt you. But
No, and I think the newer agents, like you said before, don't really know much of that. So I do feel that when I do an escrow, I'm educating people. It feels really good.
Yeah.
I like it.
And so when we're working with buyers and sellers, the agents, although the agents are the facilitators of the transaction, you are working directly with those buyers and sellers with specific confidential information in regards to how they're going to take title and different things. And we're going to be talking with a title person next week. But does escrow tell me how to take title? Or they're always asking the question, how are the buyers taking title? Tell me a little bit just about that.
That's a great question. I get asked that all the time. We have a form, actually, that we have our buyers complete.
Right.
We not only have them check off the box, and I'll expand on that in a second, but also sign it and also write the name exactly as they want their name to appear. That way, then when we prepare our deed and they take title, we have it correctly. You could be a single woman, a single man, you could be a married man, you could be a partnership, an LLC, a corporation, many different ways to take titles, and we don't tell them. We do refer them to either their CPA and or legal counsel, because the way you take title can have tax consequences.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. It's very interesting. And
Yeah.
I think that's important when people, especially when we're going into a contract for, I'm always asking, is this in a trust? If we're buying or selling something in a trust, do you need to see copies of that trust? Do you not? Or
Trust
the
agreements,
trust
absolutely.
agreements, who's
Corporate
the signers
documents.
are, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that is correct. If they're taking title that way, it has to be approved and verified.
Now, I think a lot of people ask, how long is escrow?
Well, as you know, according to the purchase contract, it could be 30, 60, 45 days. We like it to be as soon as possible, the sooner the better. But mostly we're seeing 30 to 40 days. It really just depends on the type of transaction. Is the buyer getting a loan? Is the buyer paying cash?
Is there a homeowners association involved, which can take a couple of weeks to get homeowners association documents? And that's a whole nother thing that escrow handles. If my buyer is purchasing a condominium or townhouse that has
Correct.
a homeowners association, and I know a lot of our communities, such as Aliso Viejo and sometimes Irvine and certain communities, have 2 homeowners associations.
Sometimes 3.
Yeah, and we need to order those documents, and they want them to be paid for up front.
That is correct. That's the way they do it today.
Yeah.
Not when the escrow closes.
Right.
All up front.
So whoever is specified in the contract is going to pay for those homeowners associations, and even sometimes we're ready to close and the documents aren't there, and that's how escrow can be prolonged, or certain
Correct.
things can.
And I think that's the reason why when an escrow opens, I think communication.
Is
There's
key.
many moving parts to an escrow. There's many variables, and it is a process. And that's why when an escrow opens, we want to make sure that we have all the information that we need from the listing agent and from the selling agent, whether there's associations, whether it's a leased land, whether there's a charitable endowment fee on the property, whatever that may be. I think communication is the key.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. I had an escrow cancel about a month ago, and there are paperwork that needs to be supplied by both parties. And what happens if there is a cancellation of escrow and my buyer has his $20,000 sitting in escrow? How does that work? How do they get their money back? Or
Well, that's an interesting question. Well, first, if an escrow cancels, the agent really can't draw a cancellation instruction unless it's mutual. So hopefully the escrow cancels, not hopefully, but if it does, the buyer's going to get their deposit back, or the seller's going to retain funds, whatever that is, it's written in there, it's agreed to, and it's signed. Then it comes to me, and then I actually draw our separate cancellation instructions. Once the car cancellation, California
The form.
Association of
The form
Realtors
we fill
form,
out,
the
yes.
form you fill out is signed. I get it, I prepare mine, that gets signed, then we release the buyer's money. However, again, I do want to stipulate it has to be a mutual instruction, otherwise we don't draw it up. We don't prepare it.
right, and there's where some problems can happen in that sort of stuff. Well, most of the times it's amicable, but sometimes it isn't.
Correct.
So Tell me, how does escrow work with lenders and title companies? When we're in an escrow, there's a lot to be done with the lender, who's a big part of the transaction. If my buyer's getting a loan, they're pretty much dictating what's going to happen to when the appraisal's going to come through and the loan documents. And how does escrow handle the loan documents? Real quick in a nutshell.
Well, as soon as the escrow opens, we do open up title. And of course, title insurance is like any other title. I won't expand on that, but there are title companies, and I know you're going to have someone that can
Right.
probably say more about that. That's our responsibility. Escrow, unless the agent's opened it ahead of time, we will go ahead and make sure title is clear once that prelim is issued. But then we get the lender information and we work with the lender. So the lender's job is to, of course, make sure that there is loan approval. They need to do an appraisal, and they need to go ahead and run the credit.
Gotcha.
And move forward with that. The sooner we get loan approval from the lender, the sooner we can close the escrow.
Right. And when we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll talk about how the funding and the loan docs and all of that stuff works to actually get to closing.
Sure.
So thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
When you use the Premier Rewards Gold Card from American Express, the rewards points can keep on multiplying. Buy 3 with triple points on airfare. Buy 2 with double points on gas and groceries. And a single point for pretty much every other dollar you spend on the card. Then, start choosing from over 1 million rewards to redeem all those points. Apply today and the annual fee for the first year is on us. Call 1-800-AXP-GOLD or visit axpgold.com. The annual fee for the card is $175. See terms, conditions, and restrictions at axpgold.com.
Do you want a free analysis of your inbound marketing? Do you want it in 30 seconds or less? Then check out Marketing Grader, the free marketing tool from HubSpot. It's simple. Just go to marketinggrader.com, enter the URL that you want to analyze, and Marketing Grader will instantly give you a detailed report grading your lead generation, mobile marketing, social media, competitive benchmarking, and more. It's simple, it's powerful, and it's free. marketinggrader.com. All right, we're back with the ladies talking all things escrow. And I have a question, and somebody tweeted in a question, and they're kind of the same
Sure.
question here. So let
Okay.
me see if I can combine them here. What separates one escrow company from another? And the second half is, how do you pick one? Do I just let Roseanne, my agent, say, here's who I use? Or do I say, no, I want my own escrow company? Because I probably don't have one. I only do this once or twice in a lifetime.
That's a great question.
That is a great
So
question.
what sets them apart, and how do you pick one?
Well, the way we do it here is the listing agent on behalf of the seller does have the choice of services. So when the escrow actually comes to me as the escrow officer, escrow manager, Roseanne, for example, would stipulate that in her purchase contract that she would like to use the seller's choice of escrow. Now, when I say that, that means that the listing agent has the choice of services on behalf of the seller. Would that be correct, Roseanne?
Yes, absolutely. So when we're writing an offer, now, for instance, I opened an escrow today, and unfortunately it was not with Kim because I was not the listing agent. So my buyers...
But could you, should you, would you say, no, I want to use my own escrow?
Well, I can write in my offer seller's choice or Kim Ornellas, Coast Pointe escrow. However, 95% of that time, that list agent, especially, will use their escrow company. For instance, Kim is in our office. She's our in-house escrow manager at Keller Williams at Newport Beach. So we do prefer any of our listings be ran through Kim and our escrow.
And why? Why? Just because you're comfortable? Because she's there? Because you've seen bad ones? Give me some stories here. I want to know. They can't all be the same.
Communication, concierge
Right.
service, and I'll let her speak to that.
Yeah, I think it really is about not only developing a relationship, but also, I
Absolutely.
think, supporting the company. I think what's best for us is best for the company, and I think also the location we are located in our office. There's many real estate firms all over the county that do have their own in-house escrow company. And it really is important that most of the agents support the in-house. And it is about, then again, establishing that relationship and, of course, giving great customer service in order to keep the business coming.
And part of that customer service is being able to call Kim or walk into her office and say, my seller wants to know how much he's going to net off this sale. If we sell at this, we've got an offer. What will he net? And she can whip out a settlement sheet that I can present to my seller, which gives us an idea, give or take, closing days, variables with insurance and prorations, a fairly good idea of what they'll take away from that sale, as well as buyer's costs.
Well, of course, I told you once before my horror story. I've only ever bought and sold 2 properties in my life, and the second one that I did, this is in the go-go days when, you know, they were just lined up out the doorway here, and I went into to the escrow agent who I'd never met before, who was not I just walked in and said, go here, sign this, and they presented me a stack that looked like a phone book, and I started reading it. She said, what do you think you're doing? I said, I'm reading it. She said, we don't have time to do that. Just start signing. There's people right down the corner here. I don't have time to sit and do this. So, you know, I don't know. Give me some other horror story. What do bad escrow people do?
Well, I'll be honest. I don't really know. I have to be very, very candid here. I really don't have any bad escrow stories. I'm not going to tell you I haven't seen them or I haven't put out the fires or done damage control when I was managing, you know, large escrow units. You know, if there's a problem, we just know that we can fix it and make it right. But I have to be honest, I just don't have any escrow horror stories, and I'm very thankful.
And I'm grateful to work with you and any escrow officer that is worth their pot of gold, is communicative, will provide not advice, but go over the paperwork with the buyers or sellers to make sure that they get a clear understanding of anything.
You mean they let them read it?
They let them read it. Right. Now, the lender documents are a separate story, and that was one of the questions that I was going to get back to with Kim we took before the break was, so my buyer's getting a loan, and now we have loan approval. And just recently, an agent I was coaching said, well, the other agent is being condescending to me because I asked for the keys to the house. And I said, well, you haven't closed escrow yet. Your buyers haven't even signed their loan documents yet. So there is a process of once the loan is approved and then the documents are written by the lender, forwarded to the escrow company, and then what happens?
Well, once escrow gets the loan documents, we prep them. And when I say prep them, that means we get them ready for signature. We contact the buyer, find out where the buyer needs to sign, where is the buyer located. We make the buyer a copy package of the loan documents. We review the loan documents. We have to make sure the buyer's name's right, the seller's name's right, the property address, the sales price, the loan amount. I mean, we have to go over what's called the lender's instructions within the loan documents. And once we review those,
double checking, check, double check.
It's true. Then we contact the buyer for signature. Now, these documents have to be originals. They are not e-verify. They're not DocuSign, nothing electronic. They all have to be original wet live signatures, which means they can come into escrow to sign, or we, as I am myself a mobile notary, go to the client directly and get them signed. Once that's all signed and that's taken place, they go back to the lender, and we wait for the lender to review them. Maybe it goes back to underwriting. We try to get it funded, meaning that lender is ready to go and they want to send that money out for recording to our title company.
That's what we want.
And then we close.
Funding.
And then we do possession and keys, which escrow, and I'm glad you brought that up, Roseanne, does not handle possession and does not handle the exchange of keys. Occupancy at the close of escrow. I get asked that a lot.
And when escrow closes, that is when, after the loan documents are signed and the money has been funded, it goes to the title company, and you set it up to be recorded by the county recorder.
Correct.
Correct. Or and that's when we have recorded, is when we have closed.
That is correct. If there's a loan, we're recording a deed of trust, or we're recording a grant deed. We could be recording some other recordable documents, which we won't get into today. And then they run them down via messenger to the recorder's office, and they make sure that they all get date stamped. And as soon as that recorder puts that date stamp on it, and stamps it with that seal, it's a done deal. And then I call the agents and congratulate everyone, and it's over.
And they own the house. And,
Yes.
and you know, I did kind of skip over one little thing that was in my notes is prior to that, you want to make sure that the buyer has homeowner's insurance.
That would be a requirement of the lender.
Requirement of the lender. And if I'm paying cash for a home, do I still need homeowner's insurance?
I would absolutely. Now, as far as the escrow holder handling it, usually on a cash transaction, we stay away from that. We put it in the instruction. It's paid outside of closing. Sometimes if a buyer wants me to do that, you know, I might do that. But even if it's cash, the buyer still should obtain it.
Now, there's some other things that we pay out of escrow now that are interesting, whereas a termite inspection, if there's a loan and termite clearance is required to get that funding. Most times sellers will ask, well, I don't have that money to pay for that termite repair. And so tell us a little bit about that works. I know that I can order the repairs to be done, and then you work with the termite company on getting them paid.
Correct. So once the agent orders the termite report and completion, or if it's just a report, that then gets forwarded to escrow. It also gets forwarded to the buyer's agent, as well as the seller's agent, as well as the seller, again, as well as the buyer.
Everyone gets to see it.
Everybody gets to see it. It's really important because it is a requirement that the buyer approve that and sign off on that before the escrow closes. I then make sure that I pay that with an invoice and or a bill. So a lot of times, even though I get a bill and an invoice, I will always religiously call the termite company before the escrow closes, just to make sure there wasn't an update and just to make sure the invoice is still the same, and then I pay it.
And that's a good idea, because I had a listing just recently where my sellers paid for their termite repair work, which was over $5,000, wrote a check to the termite company, and this was an in-house escrow with a Keller Williams office, but not our office. That was part, he brought the buyer in, so that was part of their deal. You didn't do it.
Sure.
And then about a week later, I got a call from the termite company and said, you know, we got paid twice, and we have $5,000 here for your sellers. And, you know, of course, I get to be the hero and call my seller and say, hey, guess what? You're getting $5,000 back. But I would say, in retrospect, that particular escrow agent, there were some things that happened during the transaction and some miscommunications. And one of that was, well, let's see, where we didn't check up with the termite company to see if it had been paid or not. So they went ahead and paid it.
Somebody else wants to know, okay, so I'm assuming that one of the reasons you have escrow in this state is to protect people. It's a neutral third party handling all this.
Absolutely, yes.
What happens if somebody screws up? Does the escrow, I guess you decide who is a mistake. The title company put it in the wrong name, the escrow didn't follow instructions, or something else was not conveyed. Or is this, when this all goes south and it turns into some big lawsuit here, who pays
that
for all this?
That would be all depending on what the problem is and what the issue really was. One of the reasons why we have title insurance is not only to protect the seller, but to protect the buyer, and of course, if there's a lender, the lender's investment for the clear title. So if it was something to do with title, legal description, property address, assessor's parcel number, title would make sure that that would be taken care of. If it was something that escrow did, then of course escrow would take care of it. For example, let's just say, like Roseanne was saying, a bill got overpaid or a bill got underpaid. We would make sure that we got it paid. Like I said, I don't have too many horror stories, but
I think a lot of times when something goes south, it's generally a miscommunication between the buyers and sellers, or the buyers and sellers agents. I think a lot of agents can create more drama than necessary, and having a smooth transaction is key, wouldn't you say?
I would, and I want to get back to what the gentleman said as far as our caller. It is for the protection of the buyer and the seller, because they are the principals in the transaction. But I think what Roseanne said is really important. And I said this before, it is all about communication. When you enter into an escrow, the agents just cannot walk away. They need to stay, and they need to be engaged, and they need to be communicating.
And follow
You're
up.
fabulous. You do that all the
Follow
time.
up.
You're on top of it. I mean,
What's going on?
Everything.
Here, we're here. And there's usually group emails. We do a lot of stuff over email now. But there's good old pick up the phone. And it's interesting because because I do coach a lot of younger agents who like to text and don't like to pick up the phone. And there are situations where you need to call someone and find out what's going on right now. And a text or an email just isn't going to cut it.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
You know,
and
my
you're right.
internet was down this morning, and you know, I opened an escrow and picked up the phone and called people and said, hey, the earnest money deposit and different things like that.
So if people want to pick up the phone and call you guys, how do they do that?
So how will we reach you if we would like to open an escrow with you, Kim?
If you were to, well, we are in-house for Keller Williams, so the one thing to remember is that since we're governed by the BRE, I cannot do any escrows except for the Keller Williams that are employed and reside in the office at
Okay.
Keller Williams, Newport Beach Estates.
Good to know.
I can't do any other KW office or any other real estate company. So
Exclusively.
we are not governed by the Department of Business Oversight, so I'm very limited. So it would be opening up an escrow would be me and the agent directly in my office, and the agent would contact me directly via phone, via email, via text.
They would need to work with me on one of my listings, Paul.
Okay. and if you're an agent listening, let's say they are just an independent agent and they're trying to find their own escrow company. There's 1 million escrow companies out there, aren't there? 2 million, maybe. How do I find an escrow company if I'm an agent or if I'm a buyer-seller and I want to insist on doing this myself? I don't even know how I'd go find them, much less qualify them.
Well, I think that you can first, of course, look on the internet, which I think is a popular source for people to find many things. I know that I have many of my sellers that will tell me that they've done that. Even after opening up escrow, they'll look me up.
Find you.
Yep, right.
Right.
Or there is the Escrow Association of Orange County or the California Escrow Association. You know, they can always, recommend
Kind of like a
escrow
better
companies.
business bureau for escrow.
Or their agent.
Their agent usually is the best source.
Okay, and if our agent's Roseanne, how do we get in touch with you?
So you can reach me at the Nitty Group. That's THENITTI at cox.net. My website is shopochomes.com. Or you can give me a ring at 949-315-9104.
And you'll answer? You'll pick up the phone
I
and
always
answer?
pick up my phone, except when I'm doing my radio show.
There you go. All right, thanks so much for
Thanks
tuning
for joining
in.
us, Kim.
Oh, thank you. It was my pleasure.
All right. You've been listening to another episode of Keeping It Real Estate with the person who really knows the answers, Roseanne Nitty. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station, OCTalkRadio.net.